Y'all, I need you to sit down for this one, because what I'm about to tell you is so wild, so absolutely hypocritical, that even by Trump standards, it's shocking. And listen, I've been watching this man for years now, so that's really saying something. Donald Trump, the same man who's currently calling for Democrats to be executed, who's talking about military tribunals for his political opponents, who's suggesting that people who disagree with him should face the death penalty, this same man is out here claiming he's the defender of law and order. Child, you cannot make this up. The man who incited an insurrection, who's been indicted multiple times, who's found liable for sexual abuse, who's been convicted of business fraud, that man is telling America that he's the one who stands for law and order. Now, I'm a lawyer. I spent years in criminal justice before I came to Congress. And let me tell you something, I know what law and order actually means. It means equal justice under the law. It means accountability for everyone, no matter how rich or powerful you are. It means respecting our Constitution and our democratic institutions. But what Trump means when he says law and order is something completely different. What he means is laws for thee, but not for me. Order that protects him and punishes anyone who dares to hold him accountable. So let me break down exactly what's happening here, because this is dangerous, y'all. This is real. Okay, so let's start with the facts. Over the past several months, Trump has escalated his rhetoric to levels we've never seen before, not even from him. He's been posting on Truth Social, talking at rallies, doing interviews where he's explicitly calling for the execution of his political opponents. We're talking about members of Congress. We're talking about judges and prosecutors. We're talking about military leaders who followed their constitutional oath instead of following him. He's called for General Mark Milley, the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, to be executed for treason. Now, let me pause right there. General Milley's crime, according to Trump, he communicated with his Chinese counterpart during the final chaotic days of the Trump administration to reassure them that America wasn't going to launch a surprise attack. That's literally part of his job, preventing nuclear war through military-to-military communication. But Trump sees that as treason because it wasn't about serving Trump personally. Trump's also repeatedly suggested that the prosecutors investigating him, people like Jack Smith, Fani Willis, Alvin Bragg, should face consequences beyond just losing their cases. He's talked about investigations into them, prosecution, using the Justice Department as a weapon of revenge, and his supporters eat it up, chanting "lock them up" at rallies, just like they did with Hillary Clinton in 2016. But here's where it gets even more disturbing. Trump has specifically mentioned members of the January 6th committee, Republicans and Democrats, who investigated the insurrection. He's called us thugs and scoundrels. He said we should be prosecuted. Now, I wasn't on that committee, but I'm proud of my colleagues who were, including Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger, who put country over party. And Trump's message is clear. If you investigate me, if you hold me accountable, you'll pay for it. Now, at the same time, and I mean literally at the same time, Trump is campaigning on being the law and order president. He's running ads talking about crime in cities. He's claiming that Democrats are soft on crime, that we don't respect law enforcement, that we want chaos in the streets. He's positioning himself as the strong man who will restore order to America. Y'all see the problem here, right? The man calling for extrajudicial executions of his opponents is claiming to represent law and order. The man who pardoned war criminals, who commuted the sentences of corrupt politicians, who dangled pardons to his co-conspirators, that man claims he's tough on crime. The man who told the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by, who called January 6 rioters patriots, who promises to pardon insurrectionists, he's the law and order candidate. It's gaslighting on a scale we've never seen. And we need to call it out for exactly what it is. So let's talk about this hypocrisy directly, because it's not just absurd, it's dangerous. Trump's version of law and order has nothing to do with actual law or actual order. It's about power, it's about control, it's about using the legal system as a weapon against enemies while shielding himself and his allies from any consequences whatsoever. Let me give you some examples, because I got the receipts. When Trump was president, he pardoned or commuted the sentences of multiple people who were convicted of lying to protect him. Paul Manafort, his campaign chairman, convicted of financial fraud, witness tampering, pardoned. Roger Stone, convicted of lying to Congress and witness tampering, sentence commuted, then pardoned. Michael Flynn, who pled guilty to lying to the FBI, pardoned. Charles Kushner, who committed tax evasion, witness tampering, and illegal campaign contributions, pardoned. And oh, by the way, Trump just nominated Charles Kushner to be ambassador to France. You can't make this up. But when it comes to people who oppose him, Trump wants the book thrown at them. He wants prosecutors arrested. He wants military tribunals. He wants executions. Now, let me be clear about what law and order actually means in a constitutional democracy. It means that everyone is equal before the law. It means that if you commit a crime, you face consequences, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican, whether you're rich or poor, whether you're powerful or powerless. It means that the legal system operates independently of political pressure. It means that prosecutors follow the evidence wherever it leads, not where a president tells them to go. But Trump's version, it's the opposite of all that. His version of law and order is, I can do whatever I want, and if you try to hold me accountable, I'll use the power of the government to destroy you. That's not law and order. That's authoritarianism. That's dictatorship. That's exactly what the founding fathers wrote the Constitution to prevent. And here's what really gets me. Trump and his Republican enablers say this stuff out loud now. They're not even hiding it anymore. Trump has said explicitly that he will appoint a special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. He said he'll use the Justice Department to prosecute his political enemies. He's talked about weaponizing federal agencies against anyone who opposes him. And Republicans in Congress, most of them are either cheering him on or staying silent. Remember when they were so concerned about the weaponization of the Justice Department? Remember all those hearings where they brought in whistleblowers who claimed the FBI was politically biased? Remember Jim Jordan's whole weaponization committee? That was all projection, y'all. They were accusing Democrats of what they were planning to do themselves. Because here's the thing. When Trump says law and order, what he really means is laws that protect me and order that keeps me in power. When he says he's going to clean up crime, what he means is he's going to target his political opponents. When he says he's going to restore justice, what he means is he's going to corrupt the Justice Department to serve his personal interest. And let's talk about the crime issue for a second, because Trump loves to talk about crime in Democratic cities. First of all, crime rates are actually down across the country, including in major cities. But second, and this is important, when Trump talks about being tough on crime, he's talking about street crime. He's talking about prosecuting poor people, disproportionately black and brown people, throwing them in prison for low-level offenses. But white-collar crime, corruption, abuse of power, suddenly he's not interested in law and order anymore. When his associates commit crimes, he pardons them. When wealthy donors break the law, he protects them. When corporations defraud consumers or violate regulations, he looks the other way. But a kid caught with marijuana, lock him up. Someone crossing the border seeking asylum, cage their children. A protester exercising their First Amendment rights, send in the National Guard. That's not law and order. That's selective enforcement based on who has power and who doesn't. And we need to call it what it is. Corruption dressed up in patriotic language. Now let me take y'all deeper into why this is so dangerous. Because it's not just about the hypocrisy, though Lord knows there's enough of that. It's about what happens when a president sees the legal system as a personal tool rather than an independent institution that serves justice. Let's start with Trump's own legal troubles, because they're extensive and they show exactly how he views law and order. Trump has been indicted in 4 separate criminal cases. 4. He's facing 91 felony counts. And these aren't made up charges, y'all. These are serious allegations backed by evidence. Mishandling classified documents so sensitive that they could endanger national security and human intelligence sources, conspiring to overturn a free and fair election, pressuring state officials to find votes that didn't exist, organizing fake elector schemes, inciting an insurrection. Now, when you or I get charged with a crime, we go through the legal process. We get our day in court. We present our defense. The jury decides. That's how the system works. But Trump, he's fighting these cases by attacking the prosecutors, attacking the judges, attacking the jury pools. He's claiming it's all a witch hunt and political persecution. He's promising to make these prosecutions disappear if he becomes president again. Think about what that means. A president who can commit crimes and then use the power of the presidency to avoid accountability, that's not law and order. That's placing one person above the law. That's kingship. That's exactly what we fought a revolution to escape. And here's where it gets even more concerning. Trump has explicitly stated that he will use the Justice Department to prosecute Joe Biden and his family. Now, let's be clear about what's happened with Biden. He cooperated fully. When classified documents were found at his office, he invited investigators in. He sat for interviews. That's what innocent people who respect the rule of law do, but Trump is promising to prosecute him anyway, not because there's evidence of crimes, but because Trump wants revenge. As someone who practiced criminal law, let me tell you what this means. It means the Justice Department would no longer be an independent institution seeking justice. It would become a political weapon. And once that happens, once we cross that line, we don't come back from it easily, because the next president will feel justified doing the same thing, and the next one. And suddenly, we're not a democracy anymore. We're a system where whoever wins the election gets to prosecute their opponents. Now, I know some folks might be thinking, well, didn't Trump get investigated when he was president? Yes, he did. But here's the crucial difference. Those investigations were based on evidence of actual wrongdoing. The Mueller investigation was initiated because of documented contacts between Trump campaign officials and Russian operatives. The impeachments were based on Trump's own actions. His phone call with Zelensky is a perfect example because we have the transcript. The January 6th investigation happened because we all watched an insurrection happen on live television. What Trump is promising is different. He's promising to investigate his opponents first and find crimes later. He's promising prosecution based on political loyalty, not evidence. That's the opposite of how law and order works. And let's talk about the execution rhetoric specifically, because this is where it gets truly chilling. Trump has talked about executing drug dealers. He's praised authoritarian leaders like Duterte in the Philippines and Xi in China for their brutal approaches to drug crime, including extrajudicial killings. He suggested that shoplifters should be shot. He's called for executing people he labels as traitors, which seems to include anyone who disagrees with him or holds him accountable. Now, we have a death penalty in this country. I'm not here to debate whether we should or shouldn't. That's a separate conversation. But what we have is a legal process for capital punishment. It involves trials, evidence, appeals, extensive legal review. It's limited to the most heinous crimes, and it's applied through the judicial system, not by executive order or presidential decree. What Trump is describing is something entirely different. He's talking about using military tribunals for American citizens. He's talking about expanding the death penalty massively. He's talking about expedited processes that skip the constitutional protections we all have. And most disturbing of all, he's talking about applying these measures to political opponents. Let me say this as clearly as I can. When a political leader starts talking about executing his opponents, that's not law and order. That's fascism. That's how democracies die. That's how you end up with authoritarian regimes where dissent is criminalized and opposition is literally deadly. And here's what keeps me up at night. Trump isn't hiding this. He's running on it. He's making it central to his campaign, and millions of Americans are cheering for it. They've been so convinced that Democrats are the enemy, that we're destroying the country, that they're willing to support extrajudicial violence against us. That should terrify every American who values democracy, regardless of party. So let's talk about who's enabling this, because Trump couldn't do this alone. He needs people in positions of power to either actively support him or stay silent while he dismantles democratic norms. And unfortunately, he's got plenty of both. Let's start with the people he's already nominated for his potential second administration, because these choices tell you everything you need to know about his intentions. He's nominated Kash Patel to run the FBI. Now, who is Kash Patel? He's a Trump loyalist who has explicitly said he wants to prosecute journalists and government officials who oppose Trump. He's published a list of deep state enemies. He's promised to use the FBI as a weapon against Trump's opponents. That's who Trump wants, running the premier law enforcement agency in America. Then there's Pam Bondi, nominated for Attorney General. When she was Florida's Attorney General, she received a donation from Trump's foundation and then declined to investigate Trump University fraud allegations in Florida. She's been one of Trump's most vocal defenders, appearing on TV constantly to attack the prosecutors investigating him. Trump wants her to run the Justice Department, the same department currently prosecuting him. Y'all see the conflict there? And let's not forget about the Republicans in Congress who are enabling this. Jim Jordan, who chairs the Judiciary Committee, has spent the last 2 years holding hearings not to ensure justice, but to undermine legitimate prosecutions of Trump. He's used his position to attack prosecutors, to spread conspiracy theories, to intimidate witnesses. He's turned congressional oversight into a protection racket for Trump. Marjorie Taylor Greene has called for the execution of Democrats, including Nancy Pelosi. She's talked about civil war. She's promoted violence against political opponents openly. And what consequences has she faced from Republican leadership? None. Kevin McCarthy put her on committees. Mike Johnson treats her as a valued member of the caucus. Then there's J.D. Vance, Trump's running mate, who has said explicitly that if he had been vice president on January 6th, he would have done what Trump wanted, refused to certify the election. Think about that. The man who could be one heartbeat away from the presidency has said he would have participated in overturning a Democratic election. But it's not just the people Trump has chosen or the MAGA extremists in Congress. It's also the so-called moderate Republicans who stay silent. It's the ones who know better but won't speak up because they're afraid of Trump's base. It's the senators who privately express concern but publicly toe the line. It's the former Trump officials who write books about how dangerous he is but then endorse him anyway. Mitch McConnell is a perfect example. After January 6th, he gave a speech on the Senate floor saying Trump was practically and morally responsible for the insurrection. But then he voted against conviction in the impeachment trial. And now he's endorsed Trump for president. So what was all that moral responsibility talk about? It was empty words. The same goes for Lindsey Graham, Marco Rubio, Ted Cruz, all these senators who know Trump is dangerous, who've said so in the past, but who fall in line when it matters because they're more afraid of losing their seats than losing their democracy. And we need to be clear, every Republican who enables this, who stays silent, who makes excuses, they're complicit. They're choosing power over principle. They're choosing their political careers over the Constitution they swore to uphold. And when historians look back at this period, they'll be judged for their cowardice. History won't be kind to people who watched a would-be authoritarian rise to power and did nothing to stop it. So what does all this actually mean for regular Americans? Because I know some folks might be thinking, this is just political talk. Politicians always exaggerate about their opponents. But listen, this is different. This is dangerous in ways that affect every single one of us, regardless of who we voted for. First, if Trump succeeds in turning the Justice Department into a political weapon, it means that none of us are truly safe. Today, it might be Democrats he's targeting. Tomorrow, it could be journalists who write unfavorable stories. The day after that, it could be business leaders who don't contribute to his campaign, or clergy who preach messages he doesn't like, or teachers who teach history he wants to erase, or just ordinary citizens who speak out against government policies. Because once you establish the principle that the president can prosecute his political enemies without real evidence of crimes, you've opened a door that's nearly impossible to close. You've created a precedent that says the law doesn't apply equally to everyone. It applies based on political power and loyalty. Second, this undermines one of the fundamental principles of American democracy, the peaceful transfer of power based on free and fair elections. If Trump can prosecute Biden for crimes that don't exist, what happens in future elections? Does the losing party always get investigated? Does the winning party always use the Justice Department to go after their opponents? We end up with a system where elections aren't just about policy differences, they're literally about freedom versus prosecution. Third, and this is crucial, it creates a chilling effect on public service and political participation. Why would good people run for office if they know that disagreeing with the president could lead to being labeled a traitor and facing prosecution or worse? Why would whistleblowers come forward? Why would prosecutors pursue cases against powerful people if they know they'll be targeted for doing their jobs? We end up with a government full of yes men and loyalists, not public servants committed to the Constitution. For the folks in my district in Dallas, this is personal. I represent communities that have historically been over-policed and under-protected. We know what it looks like when law enforcement is used as a tool of oppression rather than justice. We know what it means when law and order is code for controlling certain populations. And we know that when leaders talk about executions and military tribunals for their opponents, it's our communities that ultimately suffer the most. Because authoritarian crackdowns never stop with political opponents. They expand, they grow. They start targeting anyone who's different, anyone who's vulnerable, anyone who doesn't fit the leader's vision of who deserves protection and who deserves punishment. This isn't about Democrat versus Republican. This is about democracy versus authoritarianism. This is about the rule of law versus the rule of one man. And the stakes couldn't be higher. So let me tell you what actual law and order looks like, because we need to remember that there is a right way to do this. Real law and order means that no one is above the law, not the president, not members of Congress, not billionaires, not anyone. It means that when someone commits a crime, they're investigated fairly based on evidence, prosecuted if the evidence supports it, and given a fair trial where they can defend themselves. And it means that the outcome is based on facts and law, not political pressure or personal loyalty. Real law and order means that the Justice Department operates independently of political interference. The president doesn't call up the Attorney General and tell them who to prosecute. Prosecutors follow the evidence wherever it leads, even if it leads to powerful people. Judges make decisions based on the law, not based on who appointed them. Real law and order means protecting constitutional rights even for people we disagree with. It means free speech, due process, equal protection under the law. It means that even people accused of crimes get lawyers, get trials, get appeals. It means we don't execute people without extensive legal review. And here's what should happen right now. Every elected official, regardless of party, should speak out against Trump's threats to prosecute and execute his political opponents. Republican leaders should make clear that this kind of rhetoric is unacceptable and disqualifying. The media should stop treating these statements as normal political discourse and start calling them what they are, authoritarian threats. If Trump becomes president again, Congress needs to serve as a check on his power. That means refusing to confirm nominees who pledge to weaponize federal agencies. That means conducting real oversight when the president abuses his authority. That means being willing to impeach and remove a president who violates the Constitution. And it means all of us, citizens, voters, community members, staying engaged and holding our elected officials accountable. It means not becoming numb to outrageous statements. It means remembering that words matter, that threats from powerful people have consequences, and that democracy requires constant vigilance to protect. We can't afford to be complacent. We can't afford to think it can't happen here. It can, and it will if we let it. So here's what I need y'all to do. First, understand what's at stake in every election going forward. This isn't just about policy differences anymore. This is about whether we remain a democracy or become something else. Vote like your freedom depends on it, because it does. Second, speak up. When you hear people excusing this behavior, when you hear them saying Trump doesn't really mean what he says, call it out, educate your friends and family, share the facts. Don't let authoritarian rhetoric become normalized. Third, support the institutions that protect democracy, a free press, an independent judiciary, law enforcement that serves justice rather than power. These institutions are under attack, and they need our defense. And finally, don't lose hope. I know this is scary. I know it feels overwhelming, but throughout American history, we've faced down threats to democracy before. We've had leaders who wanted to concentrate power, who wanted to punish their enemies, who wanted to put themselves above the law. And every time the American people have said, no, we can do it again. We will do it again. But it requires all of us staying engaged, staying informed, and staying committed to the principles that actually make America great: equality, justice, democracy, and the rule of law. That's what I'm fighting for in Congress. That's what I'll keep fighting for. And I hope y'all will fight alongside me.